Hello, everyone. We're so happy to have you here with us on the Stronger Marriage webinar produced by the Utah Marriage Commission, hosted by Utah State University. I'm Alexis Alcott, the UMC Program Coordinator, and we are excited to have you join us today. In today's webinar, we're so excited to be joined by Emilee Krupa. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist and a licensed substance use disorder counselor. She lives and works in the beautiful state of Utah. Although she has moved out of the state a few times, she always finds herself back here. Experiences in her early adolescence led her to begin her journey in the mental health field over a decade ago. She worked as a residential staff for a therapeutic boarding school in beautiful Utah. It was here that she fell in love with helping others to heal themselves in their relationships. Since that experience, she's also worked in a variety of other settings, including both inpatient and outpatient substance use disorder treatment centers, wilderness therapy, intensive therapy retreats, and several private practices that focus on trauma, relationships, and psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. Through her experience in wilderness therapy, she's learned to love experiential therapy models and alternatives to traditional talk therapy. Emilee believes that there's still hope for individuals who find limited success in traditional therapy, and she's excited to give her clients a new experience of therapy. Outside of work, she enjoys all that his amazing place has to offer. She loves hiking, mountain biking, camping, gardening, and spending time with her husband, 2 daughters, and 2 dogs. In this webinar today, we'll dive into understanding conscious relationship foundations. What does that mean? What does it mean to have a conscious relationship? And a part of that, we'll learn the 8 core tools for conscious love. Second, a conscious conflict skills. How to feel safe, seen, and understood by your partner, and reducing negativity and learning to lead with kindness. Third, becoming attuned to your partner's emotional needs and desires, learning your partner's story and their inner world. And lastly, intimacy practices, finding your routines and rituals to help you thrive in your partnership. If you have any questions, please ask them by entering your questions to the Q&A function found at the bottom of your screens. The chat will be turned off during the entirety of her presentation, so this really is the best place to ask Emilee any questions that you might have. We'll have a 15-minute Q&A at the end of the presentation, so you can either write down your questions in the Q&A function or on a piece of paper and save them for the end. If you've joined us today for the CEU credit, make sure to stay on until the end of the presentation. The survey needed for your credit will automatically load onto the screen, and then you'll receive an email from the Utah Marriage Commission with your certificate. You may also email the Utah Marriage Commission to receive your survey on this webinar, if for some reason it doesn't load onto the screen at the end of this. The email for that is marriagecommission@usu.edu. Once the survey is completed, you'll obtain an email with your CEU credit certification. We'll now turn the time over to Emilee for her presentation.
Yay, thank you, Alexis, so much. Thank you, thank you. Hi, friends. I am so excited you're here and that you made it tonight. The webinar format is so funny because I have no idea if it's just me and Alexis hanging out here chatting or if there are 500 of you. So I'm just going to pretend that it's me and Alexis talking. I would love to just take a moment to kind of land here together. You can close your eyes if you want or leave them open, whatever feels comfortable. But taking a deep breath in through your nose and exhaling through your mouth. Maybe even making the audible sound like just letting kind of some of the stress and all of the things from the day melt away. I know 6 o'clock is a really challenging time for a lot of folks. And so really just putting away that stress for a moment and be here now together with me tonight. Taking another deep breath and exhaling. And if your eyes were closed, I invite you to go ahead and reopen them whenever you're ready, but allowing yourself to just be here present. We have about 40-ish minutes together, and I'm so excited to share some of these things with you tonight. So, like Alexis mentioned, my name is Emilee, and I'm a marriage and family therapist. I'm a substance use counselor. I specialize in couples therapy, in somatic therapy, and in ketamine-assisted therapy. I'm the co-owner of Koru Wellness. We're a therapy practice that specializes in ketamine-assisted therapy. We do workshops and retreats. And I am deeply committed to helping people learn to cultivate conscious marriage. I'm also someone who is an experiential learner, meaning I really learn best through direct experience. I really fell in love with this approach early on in my career when I was working in wilderness therapy, because there is nothing more experiential than living in the desert in the wintertime. There's nothing more experiential than that, especially I was pregnant during my last year of wilderness therapy. So there is nothing more experiential than that. And what experiential learning means in terms of therapy is actively engaging with our thoughts, with our emotions, and with our behaviors. It's playing an active role. So an easy way to think about this is I can tell you all about how to make a chocolate cake, right? What ingredients to use, how easy it is to make this cake in particular, how amazing this chocolate cake tastes. But until you've actually tried the chocolate cake or made it on your own, you really don't know what it's like. So having the knowledge of how to do things and actually doing them different are two totally different experiences, right? So my goal with you here today is to share some of my insights and strategies with you, but most importantly, offering tools and practical ways of experiencing these things so that you can leave this workshop and know what chocolate cake tastes like, right? Know how to make the cake, what it tastes like, how to actually implement these practices in your marriage, in your partnerships, if you're a therapist, in with some of the couples that you're working with. So whether you are single, engaged, dating, newly married, have been married in the past, have been married a decade or many, many decades, I hope that you can find something meaningful or valuable from tonight. Like Alexis mentioned, please, if you have questions, write them down and then bring them to me at the end. I would love to answer any questions that you have throughout this journey together tonight. So what I want to start with is some common misconceptions. These are the three that I find most often when working with couples. So number one, our partner is here to meet all of our needs. And if they don't, something is wrong, right? This is a common and potentially damaging belief that can lead to a lot of dissatisfaction and conflict in relationships. So while partners can strive to be emotionally available and responsive to each other, expecting one person to fulfill all of our needs is totally unrealistic and really can put a lot of pressure on the relationship. So emotional needs vary pretty widely among individuals, and they include things like security and love and autonomy and validation. And while our partners can play a pretty significant role in meeting these needs, it's also important for individuals to have strategies for self-care and fulfillment through multiple sources, right? Like friendships, hobbies, personal goals, all those kinds of things, right? So the truth is, partnerships are about complementing, not completing, right? So we are two whole people coming together to form a partnership, right? None of this old, outdated, like you complete me, you're the missing piece, all of kind of that outdated stuff. No, 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 we're whole and we're coming together to form this union or this family or this whatever we're hoping to form, right? So misconception number two, we should always agree on everything. This misconception completely overlooks the complexity and richness of individual difference in relationship, right? Some of us think or were raised to believe that a successful marriage means never having disagreements or conflicts with our spouse. We assume that if we just love each other, we'll always see eye to eye, right? But disagreements and differences of opinion are a pretty natural part of any relationship, friendship, business, our marriage, everything. So in conscious marriage, disagreements are seen as an opportunity for growth, both individually and as a couple. They offer moments to practice empathy, to deepen understanding, and to negotiate our own needs and boundaries. So the truth is, oh, there's that attendance thing. Sorry, let me close that. The truth is, conflict, when navigated in a healthy, productive way, can lead to a more resilient and emotionally fulfilling partnership or relationship. The last one, the last misconception here, better communication will solve our conflict issues. This one is really, really hard because I see this a lot in my practice. Couples come into therapy, and the belief is that if only I could articulate my thoughts and feelings more clearly to my partner, we wouldn't have disagreements, right? I'm guilty of this one as well, of like, if you could just know what I'm trying to say, or if you could just see my side, or if you could just understand me better, then we wouldn't have conflict. But the research actually suggests that the heart of the issue often lies not in what is communicated, but how it is communicated. So I'll say that again. The heart of the issue lies in not what is communicated, but in how it's communicated. Oftentimes, it's much, much deeper than the initial conflict. And we're going to kind of dive into that a little bit more later with one of the 8 core tools. But John Gottman, so John and Julie Gottman, if you're not familiar, are really amazing couples therapy researchers. They have tons of good books. They have a great Instagram page. They have a YouTube channel. They do so much research in couples therapy and in relationships. And I'll reference kind of them throughout the presentation. So if I say, the Gottmans, you can kind of know who I'm talking about. So John Gottman says the first 3 minutes of an argument determine how it's going to go 96% of the time. So an example of this is if I go to my partner and I say, hey, I need you to load the dishes. I always have to do it. You never load the dishes anymore, and I am tired of it. You can probably kind of guess how the next 20 minutes of that argument or 10 hours of that argument is going to go. Not well, right? John and Julie Gottman would say that is an example of a harsh startup. I'm coming in, I'm kind of attacking, right? I'm like, I always have to do it. You never have to do it. I'm sick of this. It's a harsh startup, right? Whereas instead, if I come to my partner and I say, hey, I'm feeling really overwhelmed by the housework. It would really help me out if you did the dishes. Is that something you're able to do? That's going to be totally different for me in my relationship, knowing my partner. If I said that, he'd say, yeah, for sure. And he would unload the dishes, right? So it's a completely different way of communicating with our partner, right? Our partner's complaint about the dishes typically often it's going to mask deeper feelings of being undervalued or neglected, right? Instead, if I say, I need you to unload the dishes, I always have to do it, you never do it, that's a whole lot different than me saying, I feel so overwhelmed by the housework, right? So it masks those deeper feelings of undervalued or neglected or overwhelmed or whatever the emotion or the feeling it is. So typically, simply addressing the dishes issue without acknowledging the underlying emotional need is not going to resolve the conflict. So the truth is here, both partners are worthy of feeling heard valued, and connected. And that is going to reduce conflict. So we're going to talk about conflict quite a bit here a little bit later, because I think that's one of, kind of the biggest struggles, the biggest challenges that we have in relationship is how to effectively deal with conflict. So what does it actually mean to have a conscious marriage, right? Now I've kind of brought a little bit of awareness to some misconceptions. Let's talk about what it actually means to have a conscious marriage, right? So something to consider. As humans, we often go around in this automatic way of being. We brush our teeth without much effort. We drive to work without much effort. These things become unconscious behaviors, right? Our brains are able to handle these tasks subconsciously. And our brains do this for efficiency, right? To reduce that cognitive load, right? Our brains do this because our brains like habits and habit formations. So through repetition, tasks can become habitual, moving from requiring conscious effort to being a little bit more automatic, right? And this transition happens because our neural pathways become more efficient with repeated use, right? When you perform an action good enough, your brain strengthens those connections. So a good example of this is my 3-year-old right now, well, almost 3, she'll be 3 on Sunday. It takes her a lot of conscious effort to brush her teeth, right? We have to remind her, okay, brush each tooth and sing the song and go in circles, keep brushing till the timer goes off, whatever it is. It takes a lot of conscious effort for her because she's 3, right? But as she continues this habit, her brain is going to become more efficient. She's going to be able to brush her teeth without much conscious effort, right? Just like we do as adults, right? So a conscious marriage is a relationship where both partners intentionally focus on growth, awareness, and the ongoing development of their bond. Conscious marriage is not like brushing our teeth or driving to work, where we can just go into autopilot mode and let our subconscious take over. It is not like that, right? Conscious partners say, I'm aware of my own emotions and how they impact me, and I am intentional about the health of our relationship, right? So conscious relationships are about waking up and understanding who we are and what we are bringing into this relationship, right? And we're typically bringing our past conditioning, our past traumas, our family of origin. So if you're not familiar with family of origin, that is the family that you were born into. So my family of origin is my mom and my dad and my brother, right? And then you have your family of creation, which is me and my husband and my 2 daughters. So family of origin, how it shapes our beliefs about relationship and about marriage, right? It shapes so much of what our kind of unconscious patterns and behaviors are, right? So there's a common story. I'm a storyteller, in case you have not noticed. That is another kind of thing with experiential therapy, is learning kind of through stories. So I'm going to tell you a lot of stories. There's a really common story about trauma told about 2 fish. So these 2 fish are swimming in the ocean, and a third fish swims by and says, "Amazing water today, eh, boys?" And he swims away. The one fish looks at the other fish and he says, "What the hell is water?" Right? We can become so unaware of the water that surrounds us, the routines, the patterns, the behaviors that we think are quote unquote normal. This serves as such a powerful metaphor for understanding how our family of origin issues and trauma influence our relationship, particularly in marriage, right? Just as that fish, those fish are oblivious to the water they swim in, we can be totally unaware of these deep-seated beliefs, behaviors, and emotional responses shaped by our family environments, right? These ingrained patterns, or the water we swim in, often goes totally unrecognized, but it significantly impacts how we interact with our partners. So a conscious marriage is about seeing the unseen, questioning the unexamined, and gently challenging the norms that we carry with us. With this recognition, couples can work together to create a marriage that reflects their conscious choices, their shared values, rather than unconsciously replaying these patterns of the past, right? Okay, so let's dive into the 8 core tools for conscious love. So I'm going to briefly go over them here, and then we're going to individually go into a couple of them, depending on how much time we have. I might do 2 or 3 of them. With each one, I'll kind of give you the core tool and then exercises to practice, right? That's that experiential piece. That's that, okay, we're going to make the cake, we're going to taste the cake, we're going to try it, because knowing and doing are different, right? So let's learn a little bit, let's know, and then let's do. Let's practice these things, right? We unfortunately don't have enough time in a 1-hour webinar to kind of go over all of them tonight, but I'll definitely highlight 2 or 3 of my favorite ones. These are not in any particular order. They all kind of hold equal importance in our marriage. But really, this first one I did kind of highlight because it's the most important, I think. Without it, nothing else can happen, I don't think. So number 1 is safe space, right? A conscious marriage is a safe space to evolve, to grow emotionally and spiritually, right? I'm going to kind of skip over it right now because we're going to go over it way more in depth here a little bit later. So number 1 is safe space. Number 2 is intentionality. Decisions and actions within our relationship are made deliberately with an awareness of their impact on our partner and the relationship as a whole, right? So having intention with the things that we do. We're not just unconsciously brushing our teeth. We're not just unconsciously kissing our partner. We're not just unconsciously telling them we love them and then, leaving for work. We're conscious. We're intentional. We are deliberate about our relationship. Number 3, emotional responsibility. So each partner takes responsibility for their own emotions and works to manage them without blaming the other. Without blaming the other. That's an important key piece there at the end. So I am 100% responsible for my own emotions, and it is not my job to change or fix my partner, right? It is not my job to change or fix my partner. They get to do their own work and I get to do my own work, right? And then we get to come together as a conscious partnership. So number 4, this one is kind of taken from the Gottman principles. They have this sound relationship house that they do that's really fantastic. But positive perspective is one that they talk about. And this is maintaining a positive outlook on your relationship and giving your partner the benefit of the doubt during conflicts, right? Believing that my partner is doing the best they can. They're showing up with the amount of energy that they can, and that they're doing the best they can, right? They're not intentionally trying to hurt me. They're not intentionally, not doing the dishes for me. They're not intentionally doing any of these things. Positive perspective. We're maintaining a positive outlook on our relationship and giving our partner the benefit of the doubt during those conflicts. So the 5th one, challenges and conflicts are approached as opportunities for growth and deeper understanding with a focus on resolution that respects both partners' needs. So conscious conflict. We're going to dive into this one deep here in just a minute. So I'm going to skip over it now for time. Number 6, shared values and goals. The Gottmans would call this shared meaning, right? So while maintaining individual differences and interests, couples in a conscious marriage also share common values and goals that really guide our life together, right? So paying a lot of attention to, what do we want in our future? Do we want to have kids? How do we want to spend money? Where do we want to live? How do we want to be? What kind of parents do we want to be? All of the things, right? Hopefully, this is really fostered and created early on in our marriage, right? Early on in our dating, and then we get married. Number 7, financial agreement. Money issues are the most common source of conflict. Most common by far. So agreeing on financial goals, how to manage finances, reduce stress and disagreements, all the things. Being conscious about it, just being aware of how our beliefs about money, how our money impacts us, all the things. Being conscious, we can't be unconscious about these kinds of things, right? And then lastly, making your home a haven, right? Open, honest, and vulnerable rituals are prioritized in a conscious marriage, right? Allowing partners to truly understand each other's needs, desires, and fears, right? Gottman would call these rituals of connection, right? Being connected, the routines, the things that we do together that deepen our emotional connection. We'll probably go over this one a little bit too in depth at the end because this one's the funnest one. This one's so fun. So we'll probably go over this one depending on time at the end. Even if I go over it really fast, we'll do it. But so a note about these practices. Like I mentioned, I will give you a few concrete exercises to practice together with your partner, or if you're a therapist, practice them with your couples. And I really invite you to be intentional. I am a person that believes in intention in all areas of life, right? That mindfulness, that be here now, that present moment thing, right? Our world wants us to be distracted, wants us to be on social media, wants us to listen to podcasts, wants us to work 80 hours a week, wants us to be at all of our kids' things. It wants us to just be, go, 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 do, 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 do. So be intentional. Just like we did at the beginning of this workshop, take a moment to breathe together, to relax, to let the stress of the day go, right? Take the stress, put it in another room. It'll cut, you can pick it up later. You can pick it up and bring it back in later, but take it, put it in another room. Be here now. The energy and the environment of our space really matters, right? Prepare your space, light a candle, make the space feel safe and comfortable, right? Something that is really important is sitting across from one another, right? On the floor, on your bed, in chairs, whatever is kind of most comfortable for you mobility wise, but sitting across from each other, just like these two are in this picture, where almost your shins are touching, right? Don't sit across from each other with a table in between you. Sit across from each other, right? Take a few deep breaths, make eye contact before you begin the exercise, right? Making eye contact is very important during these practices that you'll do together. The eyes are the window to the soul, right? So make eye contact with people, remain in the present moment, okay? So our first one, safe space, right? Safe space in a conscious marriage is approached with humility and vulnerability from both partners. So none of anything else matters if we don't have safety. We have to have safety. So a conscious marriage is a safe space to evolve and grow emotionally and spiritually, right? And essentially what safety means is that you are free to be yourself. It's about prioritizing trust and appreciation of one another, right? So if my partner is having a feeling, even if it makes no sense to me, it's not my job to change it, to fix it, to tell them what they're feeling. It is simply about me holding space, right? And we kind of hear that phrase a lot, holding space. What does that actually mean, right? So I have these 2 lists here, and I invite you to take a moment and just look it over. Look at these different phrases and ask yourself, what do I say most often, right? Am I saying, man, that sounds hard. I'm so sorry. Tell me more. I want to understand. Thanks for letting me know. Thanks for hearing me. I'm here listening. I can understand why you would feel that way. If I'm saying those things pretty often in a relationship, that means you're doing a pretty good job. That safety is pretty well established, right? Whereas if I am doing these unsafe, if I'm saying, yeah, I'm sorry, but you did X, Y, or Z, right? You cannot put a but after I'm sorry. You say, I'm sorry, but it's not a real sorry. It's a validation. It's a, what's the word? Justification, right? So if you're saying, oh, that's ridiculous, right? You're being selfish. You're just being anxious. You're just being sensitive. You're just being whatever, right? Or that's not true, or you'll get over it, or that's silly. That's ridiculous, right? So ask yourself, as you're looking at this list, ask yourself, what do you find yourself saying most often? Are you saying the safe things, or are you saying the unsafe, right? So the list here of safe versus unsafe are really just direct ways and examples of responses of best ways to encourage emotional safety and ways to make sure that things are either safe or not safe for our partners. If I find myself saying a lot of the things in that unsafe column, there may be some work that we need to do together, right? The most important thing here is emotional safety is about having the freedom to be myself, to be who we are, right? What a gift in a relationship where I am free to be me, free to be who I am, right? So this is vital. This is so important. This is the foundation of conscious marriage is safe space. No, not a lot of other work can't be done until this is established. So an exercise or something for, let's see, safe space. There we go. Something for you to practice, right? This little exercise. Like I mention it with every single one. Prepare your space. Light a candle, sit down, decompress, remain present, right? Notice if you do some little bit of breath work together, remain present, notice any discomfort that you have, notice any sensations in your body that come up, notice the discomfort you have. If you're making eye contact and you feel uncomfortable, right? But set a timer for this dyad that is gentle, right? Not too alarming, not something that like rings really loud. Some games have those little sand timers. Those are fantastic because they're quiet. Nothing too alarming that jolts you or anything like that. But each sentence stem ranges from 2 to 4 minutes each. So when the timer goes off, you'll switch to the next sentence stem. So if there are periods of silence during the dyad, that's okay. Just breathe together, remain connected, and then when the timer goes off, go to the next one, right? So when partner A has completed all of the sentences, you'll switch to partner B. So if I'm the speaker, my partner is the listener, they are going to manage the timer for me, right? They're going to reset it to 2 or 3. You'll probably just set it to 3 minutes each time. And then while I am talking and going to each one, right? So I'll start with something I want you to know. I'll talk about that for 2 or 3 minutes. Something I'm afraid of. I'll talk about that for 2 or 3 minutes. Something I desire, and I'll talk about that for 2 or 3 minutes. And then 3 things I appreciate about you are, right? And this is a perfect opportunity to practice. If I go back one, this is a perfect opportunity to practice this safe versus unsafe language, right? If we're doing this dyad and I say, man, something I'm afraid of is that we're getting more disconnected in our relationship. And I really worry about that. And if my partner comes and says, nah, just ignore it. Or, I mean, you're being silly. We're fine. It's totally okay. Don't worry about it. All kinds of things, right? If they say that, that can be completely invalidating to me, right? Instead, if I go through this exercise and I share all my things and they say, wow, thanks for sharing that with me. I really appreciate knowing, maybe I want to know more. Maybe, man, that sounds really hard. Hey, thanks for telling me. right? So this safe space exercise is not the time to interrupt your partner, to tell them, how they can fix their problem. No, no, no. All you're doing is you'll go through each one, you'll switch, and then your partner will go through each one. And then after, right, spend some time talking about what it was like for you. Did you have any fears come up? Do you feel more connected? Was it vulnerable? What was it like for you, right? Kind of having a little bit of a decompress after the exercise and talking about what it was like. An acronym that I use a lot is WAIT. Why am I talking? Right? Safe space is about talking less and listening more, right? The whole 2 ears, 1 mouth concept, right? I have 2 ears so I can listen more than I speak. Safe space is the opportune time to listen more than you speak, right? And just validate your partner's emotional experience. Okay, next one. I'm going to go a little fast because time flies when you're having fun. Conscious conflict. Conscious conflict resolution in a conscious marriage is approached with mindfulness, with empathy, and with a deep commitment to mutual growth and understanding. So, unlike traditional conflict management, which kind of focuses on merely resolving disagreements on the surface, conscious conflict resolution dives deeper into the root of the issues. It's looking at, why are we having these perpetual problems? Why do we keep falling into this cycle, right? Because it's very common to have conflict. Life happens. Conflict is common in marriage because two entirely different people are coming together from different backgrounds and different families of origin, and they're trying to form something totally new, right? So conflict happens. It's okay. It's normal, right? But one of the most important pieces of conscious conflict is that disagreement does not equal rejection, right? So let me say that again. Disagreement does not equal rejection, right? The fear is if there is a disagreement, then we won't be loved anymore, right? Then we'll be rejected. So the source of our conflict often comes from that huge fear of being rejected, right? And if we think about that for a moment, right? How severe rejection is, right? It's easy to kind of make light of it and, oh, it's not a big deal, and pick yourself back up and it's okay and blah, blah, blah. But think about it for a second, okay? Humans, think about humans a few thousand-ish years ago, right? If you were rejected by your tribe or by your village, you died, right? You did not survive for very long alone. We had to survive in relationship, in community, and with others, right? And our brains, they don't know the difference. They don't know that a few thousand years have gone by and we simply don't have the same amount of survival needs anymore, right? I have water that comes out of a tap. I have electricity that comes out of, I was going to say the sky, not the sky, but the ceiling, right? We have electricity that comes in our homes. We have running water. We have all these things that our survival needs. I'm not worried about, being chased by a tiger right now. I'm safe in my house. So our survival needs are just not the same anymore. So if we're getting rejected by our partner, that may trigger that fight, flight, freeze response. And our body and our brain thinks, I won't be safe. I won't be loved. I'm going to die. And we panic, right? So again, one of the most important pieces of conscious conflict is that disagreement does not equal rejection, right? It's vital to have curiosity over defensiveness, and it'll lead you to deeper intimacy, right? So really quickly, let's talk about a couple we all know too well, hopefully. Maybe that's dating myself a little bit, but Friends was the go-to show in my era. So Ross and Rachel from Friends, remember kind of the whole we were on a break saga, right? It's still the most devastating breakup of TV history. You will never convince me otherwise. It is a classic example of a conflict that became known for we were on a break. And the entire series, they argue about what the break means, who was right, who was wrong. But this conflict has absolutely nothing to do with what we were on a break means. No one's right, no one's wrong, right? It has nothing to do with being right or wrong or how we define a break. It really doesn't. So let's talk about understanding the real issue. It's not about understanding if we were on a break or not. It's about feeling hurt and betrayed, right? Instead, if Ross and Rachel went to therapy and practiced conscious marriage and open communication, and they helped each other express their feelings without placing blame of who was right and who was wrong, that relationship would look very different, right? So imagine instead, from Ross's perspective, if he were to say something. So if you're not familiar, I should probably preface, if you're not familiar, Ross and Rachel are together in a relationship. They're in this big heated conflict. They're yelling at each other. They're fighting their disagreement. Rachel says, I think we should take a break. And Ross leaves. And he goes and he sleeps with another woman. Rachel finds out the next day. And then the next, I don't know, 10 seasons are about what the break means, right? Ross is like, we were on a break. We had broken up. So I slept with someone else. Rachel was like, I meant like a break in this fight. And we were going to come back the next day and figure it out. So they fight about that for 10 seasons. Who was right? What a break means. They initiate their friends of like who was right and who was wrong. Anyway, imagine instead if during one of their conversations that they're having, imagine if Ross says, I felt abandoned and I felt hurt about our argument, and I thought we were on a pause, and it led me to make a decision that I regret deeply. I need to know that we can work through misunderstandings and clearly define our boundaries and expectations in the future. I also need your forgiveness and a chance to rebuild trust, right? Three things. I felt about a need, or I felt about a situation, and I need three things, right? And if from Rachel's perspective, she said something like, I felt betrayed and heartbroken about the fact that you were with someone else so soon after our fight, makes me question the depth of our connection and our commitment. And I need honesty and reassurance from you that our relationship is truly a priority. I need time to process this and actions that show me we're moving together, not apart, right? Imagine how differently this relationship could have been. They could have been together for the next 10 seasons or whatever. So that template is I feel about an emotion, about when a situation in a neutral way, and then I need, right? This is something that also kind of is a little bit adapted from Gottman, but a lot of couples therapists will use this template. This is so important and valuable, right? So in an exercise, practice this. Practice I feel about a situation and a need that you have, right? So important, so vital. The other thing here with this is the repair process, right? So the repair process is about understanding the feelings. What was it like for a partner to be in that space, right? So if we use the Ross and Rachel example, what was it like for you to be in that space, right? Validation, listening to and attending to the reality of that. Instead of trying to nitpick what should have happened, who's right, who's wrong, what we could have done in the past, blah, blah, blah. We simply validate each other's experience, right? Discuss triggers. We understand that what happened, the triggers that what happened to trigger what happened, and how that may have triggered past stuff, right? We take responsibility for what we're bringing to that interaction. And then we plan for the future. We take our vision into the future, right? Casting a vision towards what we want to look to in the future, right? Okay, I'm going to go super fast. I want to do this one just really, really, really quick. So making your home a haven. This one is the funnest one, right? Open, honest, and vulnerable rituals are prioritized, allowing partners to truly understand each other's needs, desires, and fears, right? So this one is about playing together, experiencing new things. Shorten the joy gap, right? The joy gap is the length of time between experiences of great joy. Make that really short. There's a whole book on that I can't remember what it's called right now, but it's a great book. But it's about shortening the joy gap. So when you have joy more often, you feel more affection and appreciation for each other, right? So shorten that joy gap, playing together. How you can do that. Oh, one quick note on kind of some of this on the making your home a haven, right? Is when we're feeling tension or in conflict, we might feel a little bit of resistance to connecting to our partner. So following some of these exercises can really allow you to kind of get back in sync, right? After conflict, we're kind of out of sync, and doing some of these particular exercises or any ritual of connection to get back into sync, so vital, so vital. So there's a couple of different ways you can do this, right? Daily appreciation. There's this nice little template here at the bottom, but start around each day by sharing something you appreciate about each other, right? Something you did right, something I appreciate about you, something I love about your personality, something I love about how you look, something I want to give you. Sharing this appreciation, right? The Imago dialogue. This one's really fun. This one's allocating time each week to engage in, we call it the Imago dialogue. Basically, it's just a structured conversation that involves mirroring, validation, and empathy. So mirroring, we didn't really get a chance to talk about what mirroring is. It's that reflective listening. It's basically just repeating what your partner says, right? So if my partner says, yeah, I feel really hurt and really disconnected. If I was going to mirror that or reflective listen that, I would say, okay, so you're feeling really hurt and you're feeling really disconnected, right? And then validation, acknowledging their perspective, like, I can see why you would feel that way. That makes some sense, right? Expressing understanding of their feelings, expressing some empathy, right? This technique fosters so much deep understanding and connection. It's so fantastic. I practice this with my couples in therapy all the time. Rituals of connection, right? Together, design and implement daily or weekly routines, right? That kind of represent those shared values and goals. They're as simple as like morning coffee together, their date night, they're all those things. Soothing touch, practicing non-sexual touch, such as holding hands, hugging, cuddling, fostering closeness and comfort, right? Love maps. Gottman has an amazing app. I think it's called the Gottman card deck or something like that. They have an amazing app that allows you to kind of connect with each other, to asking questions about hopes, dreams, fears, experiences, all those things. Nurturing a rhythm, right? Meals, relaxation, recreation. Joy keeps our relationships intact even when there are problems or upsetting emotions present. So finding your routines, your rituals, your practices for making your home a haven, for making your place safe, where you can go through conflict, you can go through anything, but you're safe. You know how to reconnect, you know how to come back together. Lastly, take a picture or screenshot this if you want, just some books and recommendations, in reading more about this or learning more about this. Like I mentioned, the Gottmans have some great books. 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work is awesome. 8 Dates is awesome. Sue Johnson has Hold Me Tight. It's a newer book. It's really good. Marriage Rules. The Eden Project is really dense, but really valuable. It's kind of like reading like old philosophy. It's by James Hollis. It's really good, but it is dense. And then Sex Talks by Vanessa Marin. She's fantastic as well. Podcasts, there's so many free resources out there, right? To really learn how to strengthen and reconnect our marriage. Obviously, a plug for Stronger Marriage Connection. They have a fantastic podcast that's wonderful, has so many good resources and skills. There's tons of good ones out there. So anyway, I know I'm over on time, so I'm going to start talking, or I'm going to stop talking. Thank you, for being here, and hopefully we've got a couple of questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. I loved that presentation. Just a reminder, if you have questions that you want to ask Emilee, go to your Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. You can just type them in and then we'll see them. We already have a question that has come in though, so we'll start with that one. How do you deal with a partner who does not want to make changes? Belief relationship is okay.
That's challenging, right? if I had a partner, right, that didn't want to really make changes, I would still recommend attending therapy on your own, right? To explore kind of your own inner world, your own inner dialogue, like doing some self-exploration, right? That can lead to your own personal insights, your own growth, regardless of if your partner is going to choose to participate in therapy or not, right? Um, Carl Jung said that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves, right? So learning about why does that activate me? What is going on there? So just, I'd still recommend, even if your partner, because I do get that kind of a lot, right? There is usually one partner that's like, I don't want to come. And if your partner's not willing to come, I'd still recommend you come. See what you can learn about yourself, do a little self-exploration, gain some personal insights, all those things.
I love that. Our next question, well, I guess this is more of a confirmation, says, just to confirm, when doing the exercises, do you toggle between each question or switch after all of the questions slash answers? And do you talk about them at the end of after each question is answered?
Ooh, fantastic question. I would really, you can do whatever you want, whatever feels most comfortable to you. But what I would probably recommend is going through, especially with our safe space exercise, have one person go through everything, and then your other person goes through everything, and then take a moment, exhale, kiss, hug, like, oh my gosh, that was so cool. And then what was that like? What came up for you? Like, how hard was that? Like, was that weird? So kind of at the end, have that check-in of how it went. But I would probably most often go through everything and then swap. That way, when the person's going through theirs, your listener can manage your timer and just manage the timer for all your questions. And then you swap, if that makes sense. That was a good question.
Our next question is, what is the longest you do therapy with a couple?
Ooh, that is a good question. It's so person specific. I know that's like the politician answer of like, I don't know, like, I don't know. It's so person specific, right? I've had couples that come in that I see them for 6 sessions and then they feel great and I don't see them again. Or maybe I don't, I've been a therapist for a little bit now, so maybe I don't see them for like a year and then they come back. Or they kind of check in and out of therapy. And then I've got couples that I have been working with for a year, or more even. So it's so dependent on what are the biggest issues, that we're coming in with. What are we, managing and dealing with? Like, if I don't work a ton with couples that are engaged or like premarital counseling. I've worked with a few, but the premarital counseling that I've done is usually pretty short because they don't have these like deep ingrained patterns. They don't have betrayal, they don't have hurt, they don't have all this stuff. They're just like, hey, I'm coming in. We want to learn some stuff. We want to figure out how to make sure that we're having a good marriage. So they're not gonna go to therapy for super long. It's gonna be a pretty short run. But then I have couples that are coming in that have been married for 25 years. They have, grown kids. They're going into this empty nester phase. Maybe there was an affair or a betrayal, or there were lies or resentments, or there's stuff. And it takes us some time to dive into that, to get through that. And so it might be a little bit longer. So that's the non-answer, but that's what I got.
Love that. Our next question is, any ideas on how my hubby and I can continue to work on growing our marriage and developing a healthy relationship in the middle of dealing with a major health issue? We're both nervous about this moving forward, especially if the health issue ends up being severe and long term.
Ooh, my heart goes out to you so, so much. Health issues are so challenging. For me, my husband and I I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2022, and it was a year long battle. We had to leave the country for treatment. I mean, it was a lot, right? And so I think when you're going through a health challenge like this, these 8 core tools become so much more important, especially, these rituals of connections and things, doing what you can, right? Doing what you can with the energy, the time that you have, right? When I was going through my treatments, I was basically on a 4-week cycle. I would get chemotherapy. I would be so sick that I couldn't move, like breathing near me was bad for a week. And then I had another week where I got, it was called mucositis. It's like ulcers in your mouth and in your esophagus. So I had that for like a week. And then I had a week that I almost felt borderline normal. And then I would start the cycle over again and I would get chemotherapy again. And so it was about, during that time, my husband and I, it was just about doing the rituals of connection that we could. It was about sitting together for 5 or 10 minutes and flipping through the Gottman card app and answering some questions. It was about just holding each other, right? But making routines and rituals in any way you can. One of, we're almost out of time. I could talk about my cancer journey for a very long time, but one of the gifts that cancer gave me was a deeper connection to my husband, because during my cancer treatments, I was a part of a clinical trial. So I live out in Eagle Mountain, and I had to go up to Huntsman, which is clear up in downtown. I had to go up there every single Friday. And so it offered so much for my husband. And I did not drive a car for like a year. I couldn't physically drive a car. So my husband would drive me up there. We would have an hour up there to kind of talk and do different things. Then we'd do my appointment. And then depending on where we were at in my chemo cycle, sometimes we'd get lunch, sometimes we would not. But then we would have an hour to drive home. And so instead of, during that hour drive, listening to music or listening to a book or a podcast or something, we just chatted. We held hands in the car. We just connected. Sometimes it was talking about cancer stuff. Sometimes it was talking about, future goals and dreams and ideas and, things that we want to do. But really just using the time that you have to really develop those rituals of connection and really building that safe space. We had to practice that safe space exercise a lot, right? Because I'm a person that usually I'm pretty internal. I have a lot going on in my head, but I don't voice it very often, right? Probably for that fear of rejection that I talked about earlier. But doing the safe space exercise is kind of that, it's like a prompt to what's going on in your world. What are you afraid of right now, right? Like, what are you, without having the need to fix it or change it or do whatever, just allowing space for, I'm really scared, or I'm really, worried about X, Y, or Z, or whatever the thing is. So my heart goes out to you. It's so challenging, but it can be something that can deepen your connection, even though it's really hard, right? And that's the other thing too, is when you have a physical illness, for us, this is probably TMI, but sex and intimacy were not really on the table for a year. It was really, really challenging. So we had to find a way of connecting and still maintaining intimacy without having that physical connection piece. So you have to kind of find your other things that deepen and allow for that intimacy. So.
That's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing an aspect of your story, Emilee.
Yeah.
Um, since we just have a little bit of time left, where can people find you on social media, on your mailing list and things?
Yes. My website, just emilekrupa.com. So Emilee is spelled with 2 E's, Emilee, Krupa.com. My website is a great way. Definitely join my mailing list. That is a super good way to find out about upcoming workshops or retreats, or how to get into with me for therapy or for things like that. It's just by joining my email list. And then I do have an Instagram. I think it's just Emilee_Krupa or something like that. But yeah, follow me on social media and join my newsletter would be great.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone that's joined us today on the webinar. We really appreciate your questions and your participation today, and showing up. Like Emilee said, at 6, it can be a rough time. So we appreciate your attendance. Once again, if you did attend this webinar for the CEU credit, make sure to stay on until the end of the webinar. The survey needed for your certification should automatically load onto this screen. If for some reason it doesn't, please just email into the Marriage Commission email, which is marriagecommission@usu.edu, and we'll make sure you get your survey and certificate emailed back to you after you complete that. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Emilee. Have a great rest of your night.
Yeah, thank